It was supposed to be just a fun night with my classmates. We picked a lake about 40 minutes from town, somewhere quiet, not a real campground, but a place people sometimes went to drink or fish. We brought a few tents, cheap beer, a speaker, and that was about it. Nothing serious. Just one of those nights that start with a plan to get drunk near water and see where it goes. By the time the sun started going down, we realized the fire was burning through wood fast. If we wanted it to last all night, we needed more, so me and my friend volunteered to go grab some from the nearby woods. It was only about a 5-minute walk from the lake. We were laughing and talking as we went, flashlights swinging, when we noticed another tent off the path, maybe 20 meters from where the trees started. It wasn't visible from our campsite, tucked away behind some bushes. We probably wouldn't have seen it at all if we hadn't walked that way. As we passed, the tent's zipper opened and a man stepped out. Mid-30s maybe, beard, wearing a headlamp around his neck. He looked normal enough. He smiled, waved, and asked if we were camping too. We said yeah, just a bunch of students hanging out by the lake. He said he'd been there for a few days already, taking sunrise photos of the lake. That made sense. The place was known for that. His setup looked like he'd been there a while. Tarps, ropes, and a small cooking area. We chatted for a minute or two. He seemed nice. Then we said we were heading deeper into the woods to get more firewood. That's when he suggested something a little odd. He told us there were 2 paths, one going slightly uphill and another that looped down. And if we split up, we could cover more ground and get wood faster. It didn't sound like a big deal, and he said it so casually we didn't think twice. My friend took the higher path, I took the lower one, and we kept within sight of each other. About 10 minutes in, I heard my name being shouted. I turned around, confused, and saw my friend up on the ridge waving frantically. Then I heard him say, "Behind you." When I spun around, the same guy from the tent was standing about 20 feet back on the trail. He was holding a machete. Not like waving it around or anything, just casually carrying it by his side like it was the most normal thing in the world. He smiled again and said something like, "Hey, I realized you guys didn't have an axe. Figured I'd help." His tone was calm, but everything about the situation felt wrong. We hadn't said anything about needing to chop wood. We were just picking up fallen branches. And technically, chopping down trees was illegal there anyway. I kind of laughed awkwardly and told him it was fine. We'd got enough already. Then I started backing away, trying not to make it obvious I was nervous. I could see my friend moving toward me from the ridge. When he got close enough, I turned and walked quickly with him back toward the lake. We didn't talk much on the way back, just agreed not to tell the others the full story, because they'd probably make fun of us for freaking out. When we got back to camp, we had barely any wood, and sure enough, everyone teased us for being lazy or paranoid. We laughed it off and kept drinking. Eventually, the fire died down, and the whole thing started to fade from our minds. It was around midnight when I noticed a small light moving through the trees toward us. A white beam bobbing slowly, getting closer. We all stopped talking. The headlamp came into view, and it was him. The guy from the tent. He walked into our campsite like it was nothing, holding an armful of wood. He smiled and said, "Thought you guys could use some more." Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then one of my classmates laughed nervously and thanked him. The man didn't leave right away though. He started walking slowly around our tents, looking at each one, peeking between them. He asked how many of us there were, if anyone else was coming later. Just casual questions. But in that setting, with the firelight flickering on his face, they felt wrong. After a long silence, he nodded and said, "All right then, enjoy your night," and walked off into the dark. No one spoke for a while after he left. You could tell everyone was pretending to be fine, but no one really was. The fire crackled and nobody drank anymore. Someone joked that maybe he brought the wood just so the fire wouldn't die, so he'd know when we went to sleep. Another said the occasional light we'd seen flashing from the woods earlier might have been his binoculars catching the moonlight. Every few minutes, someone would turn their head toward the trees. None of us wanted to admit how scared we were. We didn't sleep that night, not one of us. We sat around the fire until dawn, jumpy and quiet, taking turns staying awake and scanning the woods. Once the sky started to lighten, we all kind of looked at each other and agreed without words. It was time to go. We packed everything up, shoved our gear into the cars, and drove off before the sun had even fully risen. On the way out, we passed the spot where his tent had been. It was gone. No sign of it, no tarps, no ropes, not even a patch of flattened grass. Just empty ground, like no one had ever been there. To this day, I don't know what his deal was. Maybe he was just a weird loner. Maybe he really did mean well. But every time I think about how fast he could have reached me on that trail, or how quietly he must have followed us back later that night, I get that same cold feeling in my stomach. I moved to southeastern Washington after college for work. The Blue Mountains were close by, and as someone who grew up hunting in Montana, I was excited to learn the land before hunting season. I liked to scout alone, pick remote spots, and stay far from roads or trails. Less people meant better chances later. Being outdoors wasn't new to me. I grew up on a ranch, spent most of my childhood working with animals. I knew their sounds, their patterns, their moods. I'd been calling animals since I was 10, mimicking coyotes, elk, birds, even the rhythm of our cattle. It became second nature, and I could tell what kind of animal was nearby just by the pitch of a sound. I'm not saying that to brag, just to explain that I have a good ear. One afternoon, I decided to head into the Blues for an overnight trip. I left later than I planned, but didn't think much of it. I hiked a couple miles in before dark, climbing a ridge until I found a flat enough spot to camp. It wasn't perfect, but I had a decent view of the valley and could see deer trails cutting across below. I set up my bivvy, ate a snack, and lay back as the light faded. I woke up around 1 a.m. with the worst headache I've ever had. It came in pulses, sharp bursts of pain that faded and then came back stronger. I lay there, trying to figure it out. I'd had plenty of water and food, so it wasn't dehydration. I wasn't cold, I wasn't hungry. The pain just kept coming in waves that felt like they were syncing with my heartbeat. After a while, I noticed something else. A sound. At first, I thought I was imagining it, or maybe it was wind moving through the trees. But there was no wind. Then I caught it again. A deep, drawn-out sound echoing from the slope above me. It had rhythm. It wasn't random. It was like a call. I've heard almost every kind of animal call you can imagine, but this didn't fit any pattern I knew. It was deep and hollow, like something big. It wasn't a growl or a scream, more like a long whooping tone that rolled down through the trees. It kept repeating, steady and deliberate, every 20 or 30 seconds. The longer I listened, the stranger it sounded. It wasn't an owl, not a coyote, not anything I could name. The air felt heavier with every call. I could almost feel it in my chest when the sound echoed. I told myself it had to be a bird, maybe something I'd never heard before. Washington had different wildlife than Montana, right? That made sense, except it didn't. The sound was too strong, too powerful, too deliberate. And once I realized that, I couldn't unhear it. The headache kept pounding, worse every time the sound came. It was like the noise was pushing against my skull. By around 2 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to pack up and head out. There was a logging road about 200 yards uphill from where I'd camped. It curved back toward the main road where my truck was parked. It would take longer to get back that way, but it was easier to follow in the dark. The problem was that the sound was coming from up that slope, exactly where I needed to go. I didn't like the idea, but I also didn't want to sit there all night with my head splitting open. So I grabbed my gear, unzipped my bivvy, and started climbing toward the road. The sound came again, closer this time. When I reached the road, I could hear it just above me, no more than a few hundred yards up. I started walking, flashlight off, just letting my eyes adjust. The moon was out and the road was pale enough to follow. My heart was hammering, and I remember trying to tell myself to stay calm, that I'd be fine once I got closer to the truck. Then I realized the sound was moving. Every time I took a few steps, it would echo again. Same distance, same direction, like something was pacing me. It stayed up the slope, just far enough that I couldn't see it. I could hear the faint crunch of brush, heavy steps that matched mine. If I stopped, it stopped. When I started again, it followed. At one point, I thought I saw movement between the trees, something tall slipping behind the branches. But when I aimed my light, there was nothing. Just silence and dark pine shadows. Then the sound came again, louder, echoing across the ridge. I kept walking. I didn't run, though I wanted to. The road was narrow, and I didn't want to trip in the dark. I just kept moving, one steady pace after another, with that call chasing me from the slope above. It followed me almost the entire way down the mountain. As I got lower, I noticed my headache easing. The pressure faded, my breathing steadied, and after a while, the sound stopped completely. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. The woods went back to being dead quiet. When I finally saw my truck headlights glinting through the trees, I almost laughed out loud from relief. I threw my pack in the bed, started the engine, and drove until I hit the highway. By the time I got home, it was close to 4 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, so I started looking up bird calls from Washington. Owls, loons, cranes, anything that could have made that noise. Nothing matched. Out of curiosity, I typed "unidentified animal call Washington" and started scrolling. That's when I saw someone mention Bigfoot whoops. I actually laughed. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. But then I clicked on one of the sound clips. It was exactly what I'd heard. Same pitch, same tone, same rhythm. I felt my stomach drop. I even grabbed one of my old mouth reeds and tried copying the sound. I nailed it almost immediately, and that somehow made it worse. It confirmed how clear that sound was in my head. I've been back to that area a few times since. I even hiked up the slope where I thought the sound had come from. It's thick up there, dense brush, wet soil. It's the kind of place where sound dies fast, not carries. I never heard that noise again, not even close. I still don't believe in Bigfoot, or anything supernatural for that matter. But I know what I heard that night. It wasn't a bird or a coyote, and it wasn't human. What gets to me isn't the sound itself, it's how it followed me. It never got closer, never tried to scare me off. It just moved when I did, step for step, like it wanted me to know it could. Every now and then, when I'm out hunting and the woods go quiet, I catch myself listening for it again. Not because I want to hear it, but because part of me thinks I will. I grew up around the woods. Camping was a big part of my life. My family owned about 35 acres deep in the Rockies, maybe a 2.5-hour drive from where we lived. It wasn't a cabin or anything, just raw land with a small clearing where we always set up camp. I grew up around the woods. Camping was a big part of my life. My family owned about 35 acres deep in the Rockies, maybe a 2.5-hour drive from where we lived. It wasn't a cabin or anything, just raw land with a small clearing where we always set up camp. We'd spend entire weekends there. It was quiet, untouched, and felt like our own hidden world. My parents were both outdoors people, experienced campers, backpackers, the kind who could name trees and tracks and stars without looking them up. Nothing ever really scared them out there. One weekend, late summer, we decided to drive up after my dad got off work. That meant we'd be arriving after dark, which we'd done before plenty of times. It was probably around 9:30 when we finally turned off the main road onto the dirt path that led to the property. I remember the headlights cutting through the trees, that greenish glow when light hits pine needles. Everyone was tired, half asleep in the car. When we parked, it was just blackness beyond the headlights. The second we stepped out, something felt wrong. It's hard to describe. It wasn't danger exactly, but the air felt thick, heavy. We all kind of froze for a second. My brother looked at me like, "Do you feel that too?" Normally, even at night, the forest has noise. Crickets, owls, wind moving through branches. That night, there was absolutely nothing. Not even the faint hum of insects. Just total silence. At first, we made little jokes about it, probably just cooler weather or something, but you could tell everyone felt uneasy. My parents told us to start unloading the gear anyway, so we did. We worked fast, but every sound we made, every zipper, every footstep, felt too loud. Then we started hearing it. It began faintly, somewhere off to the left, rustling in the branches. Not at ground level either. It was up high, maybe 10 or 12 feet up, like something heavy was moving through the trees. My dad stopped what he was doing and just listened. The sound moved, and then we heard another one from the opposite side. Then another. Soon it was everywhere, circling us. It wasn't the quick, light movement of squirrels or birds. It was slower, heavier, like something with weight shifting from branch to branch. My mom said maybe it was raccoons, but even then, it didn't sound right. Raccoons don't move that high up, and definitely not that many at once. The branches were thick, and whatever was up there wasn't being careful. You could hear the wood bending and snapping, leaves shaking. By now, my brother and I were nervous. My dad told us to get inside the tent while they checked things out. So we crawled in with the dogs, zipped the flap, and just listened. The dogs were shaking. They'd been out there with us their whole lives and never acted like that. One was whining so softly it barely made a sound. Then came the calls. I still don't know how to describe them properly. They sounded almost human, like people trying to imitate how they think animals sound. A long, drawn-out howl, but there was something off about it. It had this tone, this weird rise and fall, like speech patterns twisted into something animal. And it wasn't just one. They were calling back and forth from different directions. My brother and I were in the tent with the dogs, listening while my parents moved around outside with their flashlights. I could see the light sweeping through the fabric every few seconds. They circled the camp, trying to spot whatever was making all that noise. But the longer they were out there, the louder it got. Branches snapping high above them, strange calls echoing from every direction, leaves shaking like something was thrashing through the trees. I could hear my dad calling out, trying to scare whatever it was off, but the noise didn't stop. It just kept moving around them. Then it stopped. Not slowly fading, just stopped. Every sound cut off in the same instant. I could even hear my heartbeat in the quiet. When they came back inside, I'll never forget the look on her face. My mom wasn't scared of anything. Not snakes, not bears, not mountain lions. But she looked pale. She said they couldn't see a thing out there. We all huddled together in the tent. My dad said it was probably some kind of birds or coyotes acting weird, but he didn't sound convinced. The dogs were pressed between us, still trembling. The sounds started again after maybe 10 minutes, louder this time. So loud it felt like they were right above us. There were breaking branches, grunts, weird calls, like someone was playing a recording of wild animals, but couldn't quite get it right. It went on like that for what felt like forever. Then, just like before, when my dad reached for the zipper to go out again, it all stopped. Instant silence. The air even felt different, like a pressure had lifted. He went out again with my mom, walking the perimeter with the flashlights. They didn't find anything, no eyes reflecting light, no tracks near the tents. But when they looked up, some branches were broken high up, and my dad said he saw odd scratch marks going up one of the thicker pines. Eventually, we all fell asleep somehow, though I don't think any of us really rested. In the morning, everything was normal again. Birds were chirping. The forest sounded alive. My dad walked around and showed my mom the branches and marks again, but even she had no explanation. We packed up early that day and went home. That night has stayed with me for years. We still bring it up sometimes, sitting around the table or a campfire, trying to make sense of it. My dad never really gives an explanation anymore. Back then, he said maybe it was some kind of animal behavior he hadn't seen before, but even he didn't sound like he believed it. My mom doesn't like talking about it at all. Whenever we mention it, she just says the woods don't always want us there, and changes the subject. I've camped in a lot of places since then, slept through storms, heard coyotes screaming at night, even had a bear sniff around my tent once. None of that ever felt like that night, and whatever was out there watching us, I still don't think it was an animal.